Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is jumping into the 2020 race for president. Earlier today, the Democratic hopeful spoke alongside her family in her hometown of Troy, New York.
I'm going to run for president of the United States because as a young mom, I will fight for your children as hard as I would fight for my own. And that's why I believe that health care should be a right and not a privilege. I believe we should have better public schools because it shouldn't matter what block you grow up on. I believe we need to start rewarding work in this country again because anybody who wants to work hard should be able to get whatever training they need to earn their way into the middle class and to be able to have the American dream, which has always been for everyone.
Well, Senator Gillibrand joins a growing list of Democratic 2020 hopefuls that already includes several women. With more insight, we're now joined by CBSN political reporter Caitlyn Huey-Burns. Good to see you.
Hey, good morning.
So what I find really fascinating about Gillibrand's launch of her candidacy on the Colbert Show last night and today in her hometown is that she has spent a good portion of her time supporting female candidates across the country. And we saw what happened in the midterm elections, where we saw a record number of women running, a record number of women winning. And here, as the center or the central focus of her campaign is gender. She launches the campaign. She announces to Colbert yesterday that she's a mom and she cares about kids. And we were talking earlier about how sometimes in the past, perhaps a generation earlier of women sought to distance themselves from their womanhood, mom and all that. They talked about their kids and their family, but it was more about I can do the job just like you do because I'm just like you, the man. And now you're seeing something different.
Right, because we saw a really, flood of women candidates running in 2018. You mentioned that Gillibrand campaigned for a lot of them. She has her own PAC dedicated to helping to not only promote, but to help fund women running for office. And she's not the first woman to enter the 2020 fray. Elizabeth Warren is already in this race, but she's also not going to be the last. There are expected to be a few others, potentially 2 more senators. So this is going to be an unprecedented number of women running for president this cycle. But Gillibrand really is the first so far to carve out a niche in this very crowded field, becoming more crowded by the day, it seems, as someone who is kind of staking her claim as, on gender, on the issue of promoting women. Remember, in last year, she led the charge to oust Senator Al Franken from office, and she took a lot of flack from that.
She got criticism, but also praise.
And it kind of exposed a little bit of a generational divide within the party, and so she's very much kind of, embracing that, talking about what she's learned from that, and pointing to that as a credential of sorts as she runs.
And she even in that same period was asked about former President Bill Clinton, and she, admitted that perhaps she was wrong to have sort of supported his point of view with regards to the Lewinsky scandal. And that, for a lot of people, again, it's the same thing. People say you're sort of, you're walking back what you had said earlier, but she thought that it was the right thing to do. And
it was certainly a political risk because it seems like that's where the party was moving. That's certainly what the energy from the base was talking about. But you had, some outrage from donors, which are also critical to this process. What else she said today is what we're hearing from other Democratic candidates, that they're not taking super PAC money. They're not taking money from corporate PACs. They want this campaign to be raised by money from the people and have a more democratic, lower D process. And so that's going to be another interesting kind of issue to follow.
So you've been covering Congress for quite a while, and I want you to explain to our viewers, track a little bit of her ascendancy to in politics. I mean, she started out as sort of a moderate Democrat, and she's moved progressively left.
She did, because she started out as a moderate Democrat, even a conservative Democrat, because she represented one election in a district near Albany that was very red. And so she actually is kind of using that as a credential. Now she's going to be, as an electability argument. Even though she's espousing pretty liberal views, she also says that, she has the ability to win in areas that are different from, that are red or more conservative. But, you know, that record will come under scrutiny. She had much more conservative views on things like immigration, on guns, that have changed as she came to the Senate. Now, in interviews and even today, she has said that those views changed because when she was representing, you know, larger New York, talking to families in Brooklyn affected by gun violence, for example, and immigration, that those views evolved. And she has very much owned up to that. But that doesn't mean that it will come under scrutiny, especially since there are so many other candidates running in this race.
So how much is she expecting to, can she win without expanding beyond just the fact that women are voting in record numbers now? I mean, and I get that there's a sense from her that that's going to be a key constituency of hers. Unlike Elizabeth Warren, I think Elizabeth Warren will certainly capture some of that as well, but she hasn't made it a central focus of her campaign.
She isn't talking about it the way that Gillibrand is talking about it. And Elizabeth Warren actually so far hasn't been talking about Donald Trump the way that Gillibrand talked about Donald Trump today. And when I was in Iowa a couple weeks ago, I was asking voters kind of what they were looking for in a candidate. We know it's very early on in this process, but the theme I heard over and over again was that they wanted someone who can defeat Donald Trump. Now, they don't know exactly what that's going to be like. They don't know what kind of candidate they think can do that, but we're going to see Democrats running in different ways with that in mind at some level, whether it's on rhetoric, whether it's on behavior, whether it's on policy, drawing contrasts that are clear to voters, making that electability argument. Gillibrand was also trying to make that today, and she's pointing to her record in the Senate. There are going to be lots of senators running in this race, all having records to run on, all having records that will be under scrutiny. She was saying that she has proven that she's been able to get things done.
What will it look like? We've already got, you know, Gabbard, we've got Warren, now Gillibrand. We expect perhaps at some point Kamala Harris will announce. This is going to be unprecedented. We've never faced this. And it will be interesting, I think, Caitlyn, to watch how, for example, the male candidates respond to the Me Too movement and to the Time's Up, and how they address it when some of them are asked, all of them are asked about former President Bill Clinton, when they're asked about Al Franken, when they're asked about, you know, Harvey Weinstein, who has supported liberal causes in the past, how they respond to that. And it will also be interesting to watch the dynamic amongst themselves. I mean, because it's going to be sort of historical.
Absolutely. And I think when, you know, during the ousting of Senator Franken, there was kind of a strategy at play that Democrats thought that they were able to claim the moral high ground. Remember, this was during the Roy Moore and Alabama issues. So they believe that they're ahead of Republicans on the issue, but there's certainly still some internal debate. But this is a very diverse field. You had Julian Castro get in over the weekend. He's probably the only Latino running in this race, but you have a variety of different women. And there is this question about after 2016, because you've seen this influx of women interested in politics, participating in politics at a level we haven't seen before, and voting, whether the party needs to or feels like it needs to promote a woman to this office, because they haven't been able to crack what Hillary Clinton has called the hardest glass ceiling.
So finally, I guess, you know, Elizabeth Warren has national recognition, in part because she's been on the stage for quite a while, and of course because President Trump has mocked her. Gillibrand has also been on the national stage for quite some time. Tulsi Gabbard, Hawaii. I mean, like, it's a state, obviously, and but it's far away from most mainlanders. The issues that sometimes affect the mainland don't affect Hawaii. Who's Tulsi Gabbard? What does she bring into the table? What makes her unique? What makes her think that she can gain on some of these others, including the men who have had already national exposure, federal office, federal appointments, for example, like
Well, a couple different things. She's a congresswoman and she's a veteran, but she has raised a lot of alarm bells within the Democratic Party for various positions, especially her, you know, visit to Syria and
which was very strange.
Very strange, very controversial. So I'm curious to see what her constituency will be, but I think it does speak to the idea that a lot of Democrats right now are eager to take on Donald Trump. They sense vulnerabilities, and they also feel, why not me and why not now? There's no front runner really in this race, and it's very interesting because we talk a lot about Joe Biden, whether he'll get in. There hasn't been really anybody who has been able to clear the field or whose presence would clear the field. You're seeing a lot of people seize this opportunity and figure now is a good time to at least explore the possibilities.
You know, you bring up Joe Biden and the former vice president, and I wonder, would he be somebody that would clear the field? I feel like in the way that things are shaping up right now, that he, as respected as he is, might be kind of a relic of a bygone era, but he has those blue-collar, you know, bona fides that may be enough to.
It's a really big question, and what he wants his legacy to be. Because as we know, he's very popular now. So was Hillary Clinton before she announced. She was among the most popular public office holders, which was very notable. We saw what happened in terms of public opinion. So that's certainly a risk. But you know, he hasn't cleared the field because you still have lots of people getting in. You still have people like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, as you mentioned, Amy Klobuchar, another senator from Minnesota, talking about this race, making the steps to get in at some point soon. So he hasn't cleared the field yet. And you know, I've asked different strategists and party chairs about this, and they say that this kind of speaks to the way in which Democrats want to have a debate about the party, and they want to have show their diversity and their bench.
I think it's really interesting to see this sort of diverse group of people that are, you know, going for the brass ring, and especially Gabbard, because as I said, you know, Hawaii's got some very specific interests, and as a congresswoman for that state, she will bring a perspective that I don't think a lot of people here on the mainland have heard about ways that she's been able to serve her constituents in her district. So it'll be really exciting. I love Hawaii. Everybody loves Hawaii.
I know.
Right?
I'll volunteer to go.
I know. Right. Exactly. Even you want to go cover when she's announcing, you'll go, and it'll be great. I'll follow along with you.
Sure.
We'll anchor from there for a couple of days.
Sure. Tough work if you can get it.
Thank you, Caitlyn, as always.
Thank you.